our team's task is to provide a description and analysis of leadership within the United Nations. The United Nations is an international organization composed of member states. Since its establishment in 1945, the UN has been a significant international organization. It has 193 member countries and aims to maintain international peace and security, promote international cooperation, and address global issues. The leadership role of the United Nations is reflected its authorization to take military action to defend sovereignty, impose economic sanctions on countries violating international law, mediate disputes, and deploy peacekeeping force. For example, in response to the North Korea ongoing nuclear test and ballistic missile trials, the UN Security Council passed the resolutions commending these actions and implementing sanctions. This highlighted the international community's concern of the North Korea's nuclear weapon program and to take a serious measure to restrict its nuclear activities. It emphasized the importance of maintaining international mechanism to prevent the proliferation of the nuclear weapon and in accordance with the Treaty of the Non-Proliferation of the Nuclear Weapon, prevent North Korea from attaining to status of the nuclear armed state. Resolution 1918 underscored the importance of maintaining international peace and security, demonstrating the Security Council decision-making and leadership in the addressing potential threats and crises. Overall, Resolution 1718 reflects the leadership of the UN Security Council in the addressing international security matters. Through the condemnation, sanction, and international cooperation, it seeks to uphold global peace and security. However, the international leadership and ability to take decisive action of the United Nations have always been constrained by the divisions among its member states. Its governance structure grants significant power to the 5 permanent members of the Security Council, who have veto power of substantive resolutions. It has led to criticism that the UN is subject to the influence of the major world power. The funding structure of the United Nations also relies the voluntary contribution from the member states.
Next, I would like to introduce the personality traits of leaders within the United Nations. These traits, whether relevant to their overall demeanor or specific to their tasks, are critical in determining their effectiveness as leaders. Consider the quality of self-assurance. For instance, leaders who possess unwavering self-confidence have the remarkable ability to establish trust and motivate those around them. Former Secretary General of the United Nations, Kung Fu Annan, is a prime example of this. In leadership, the effect of self-assurance shines through when tackling intricate global predicaments, as evident in his propensity to inspire confidence. Let us delve into a type of performing technical that is closely linked to the efficiency of leading. A critical element that sets it apart in emotional intelligence. This encompasses being aware of oneself, being able to control one's emotions, understanding others' emotions, and effectively managing relationships. Take for instance the case of Ban Ki-moon, an eminent Secretary General of the United Nations. His remarkable achievements in fostering global cooperation can be greatly attributed to his empathetic approach and his remarkable skill in tactfully maneuvering through diplomatic challenges using emotional intelligence. To enhance our understanding, let us incorporate an alternate ideology, perhaps derived from the spirit of transformative guidance. Leaders who possess transformative qualities and are renowned for their ability to engage in inspiration and drive within their teams, pushing them to surpass ordinary limits. Dr. Gro Harlem Brundtland, the Irish former Prime Minister of Norway and is Director General of the World Health Organization, first feels the essence of transformative leadership, incorporating the ideas presented by scholars like James McGerald. Her remarkable strength and knowledge for leading individuals to achieve a common objective embody the essence of transformative leadership. However, while individual traits have positive effects, organizational leadership still needs to consider various factors, including the environment for its effectiveness.
As mentioned above, it is important not to generalize based on individual leaders alone. Therefore, my partner and I will now proceed to analyze the leadership of the United Nations in the areas of global policies, economy, cultural, and environmental conservation. This analysis aims to provide an objective assessment of the organization's overall leadership. First, on the political front, the ongoing Israeli-Palestinian conflict is a prime example. The United Nations Relief and Workers Agency for the Palestinian refugees in the Near East was established in 1949 to provide humanitarian assistance, education, and medical care to registered Palestinian refugees living in the West Bank and Gaza Strip, as well as in Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon. The agency has 13,000 employees in Gaza and spent more than half of its budget on the education, with more than 218 schools in Gaza serving as shelters during the conflict. It was damaged by the armed strike on October 2022, but humanitarian efforts continue and the agency has reached 5.9 million people. This example shows that organizational leadership is influenced by situational factors. When the situational factors and the tasks are unclear, leaders need to give clear instructions and even take actions to solve problems. Next, let's analyze the economic aspect. As a chain reaction of the Ukraine conflict, billions of people worldwide continue to face a global crisis in food, fertilizers, and fuel. Restrictions on the import and export of food have led a significant increase in global prices for major commodities, coupled with rising energy costs. Some developing countries have turned on the brink of debt default, and an increasing number of people are at risk of hunger. Though the joint efforts of the United Nations and Turkey, the Black Sea Green Initiative was reached in Istanbul, involving the United Nations, Russia, Turkey, and Ukraine. The Black Sea Green Initiative showcases the United Nations leadership during a crisis, demonstrating decisive and compassionate leadership that combined strategic thinking to rebuild a functioning economic order. This aligns with the emergency approach emphasized in leadership, where the effectiveness of leaders is strongest when their actions are contingent on situational forces. The series of economic measures taken by the United Nations perfectly tailor to the circumstances, addressing the issue at the hand.
In the cultural aspect, the United Nations launched the Action Plan for the Alliance of Civilizations, which is part of a global framework for intercultural dialogue. Its specific work involves promoting a range of good practices at the local, regional, and national levels that encourage cultural diversity within a framework of inter-religious dialogue and other forms of cross-cultural dialogue. It also emphasizes regional and sub-regional initiatives that aim to deter all forms of extremism and fanaticism while highlighting values and principles that unite people. Placing culture at the core of development policies is an essential investment for the United Nations as a leader to apply evidence and research to their actions and practices. Utilizing evidence-based leadership, it is also a prerequisite for advancing the process of globalization under the principle of cultural diversity. In the promotion of cultural diversity, the United Nations has been active and has shown participative leadership. Lastly, in the field of environmental conservation, the United Nations has demonstrated its long-standing humanitarian leadership style. In 2022, the world experienced a series of natural crises, such as typhoons in the Philippines, severe droughts in East Africa, and floods in Central and West Africa. In response, the United Nations led a series of initiatives. For instance, the 27th United Nations Climate Change Conference held in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, broke new ground on the long-standing issue of loss and damage. The United Nations also formed a high-level experts group to provide guidance to the private sector, investors, cities, and regions in fulfilling their commitment to achieve net zero emissions. Additionally, an active plan was launched to achieve universal early warning coverage within 5 years. In this scenario, the United Nations demonstrated its effective leadership and achievement-oriented leadership in addressing the challenges of environmental conservation, showcasing the difficulty of altering leadership styles that have been steadfast in their commitment to nature conservation activities over the years.
Next, I would like to discuss the communication style of the United Nations leadership. The pattern of communication between the United Nations as an international organization and the countries it leads has specific forms and characteristics. The United Nations interact with member states through the United Nations General Assembly, the Security Council, the Economic and Social Council, and other specialized agencies. The communication model of the United Nations has two advantages. One is that the United Nations has representatives from all over the world, which creates a multicultural working environment that contributes to a more comprehensive understanding and resolution of international issues. Secondly, through the meetings of the Council, leaders have the opportunity to communicate directly in the international arena to promote mutual understanding and reach a consensus. At the same time, there are flaws in this model of communication. The first is the language barrier. The United Nations has 193 member states, but only 6 official languages. There are many countries where the mother tongue is not an official language. This leads to the possibility of compromised communication. The United Nations needs to work to eliminate misunderstandings caused by language issues. Secondly, there is an inequality of voice. Some countries are ignored and disrespected by the major powers of the United Nations because of their weakness. There can lead to these countries not having a voice in decision-making and communication. In conflict resolution, the United Nations intervenes and resolves conflicts through diplomatic means. However, the lack of enforcement power of the United Nations in resolving conflicts has led to non-compliance with decision-making by some countries, which affect the effectiveness of decision-making. The United Nations resolves all types of international conflicts through cooperation and consultation with countries around the world. However, there is still room for the United Nations to improve the effectiveness of its communication and conflict resolution skills, especially in the area of enforcement of conflict resolution.
Lastly, I would like to explain the United Nations approach of leadership in international diversity. Chapter 14 of this course is international and cultural diverse aspects of leadership. It focuses on international diversity and encourages us to understand the differences between people from different backgrounds and try to manage these differences in order to make the leadership more global and competitive. As an intergovernmental organization whose stated purposes are to maintain international peace and security, develop friendly relations among nations, achieve international cooperation, and serve as a bridge for harmonizing the actions of nations. United Nations itself plays a role in understanding the differences between nations, which are so different, such as in their political and economic systems, their development phases, and the developing paths. And the United Nations has to manage these differences and make proper coordination between nations so as to act as leader in global development. Although this kind of role player of global leader is impaired due to many factors, United Nations is still trying to be active in understanding and managing diversity between nations, especially when we see the general debate in each session of the United Nations General Assembly every year. This general debate provides a platform for all member nations to express their attitudes towards international issues, reflecting their own different understandings due to the diversity embedded in their culture or way of thinking, and out of their own interest as well. So, United Nations takes the general debate as an approach to understand and manage the diversity between nations and try to act as a leader in resolving global problems. Even though the general debate cannot always help all parties reach a consensus, it helps people from different backgrounds understand the difference and foster the intercultural communication. By recognizing and managing the diversity between nations and cultures, United Nations also gets its global leadership further enhanced.
To conclude, the United Nations plays a significant role in maintaining international peace and security, promoting international cooperation, and addressing global issues. The leadership role of the United Nations is reflected in its authorization to take military action to defend sovereignty, impose economical sanctions on countries violating international law, mediate disputes, and deploy peacekeeping forces. However, the international leadership and decision-making ability of the United Nations have always been constrained by divisions among its member states, leading to criticism that the UN is subject to the influence of major world powers. Additionally, the founding structure of the United Nations relies on voluntary contributions from member states, despite individual leaders within the United Nations exhibiting traits such as self-assurance, emotional intelligence, and transformative qualities. There is a need for further improvement in communication and conflict resolution skills to address limitations in political conflict resolution, language barriers, unequal speaking rights, and the ability to implement decisions. The United Nations, as an international organization, plays an important leadership role in maintaining international peace and security, promoting global cooperation, and addressing global issues. However, its leadership is limited by the divisions among member states and faces various challenges and opportunities for improvement. Through continuous improvement and adaptation, the United Nations can better fulfill its mission and drive global development and cooperation. That's all. Thank you.